Jeannette Joubert, chargée d'affaires à l'intérim de l'ambassade d'Afrique du Sud au Maroc, qui interviendra sur les intérêts sud-africains au Maroc. Vous avez, madame la chargée d'affaires, 15 minutes.
Bonjour et merci beaucoup pour la possibilité de participer aujourd'hui. J'espérais que vous me permettrez, après 3 ans, plus de 3 ans à Maroc, mon français est
excellent.
But I'm still not entirely comfortable in making a presentation, so I hope you will forgive me. Es wäre viel einfacher, wenn ich es auf Deutsch machen. Unfortunately, I cannot do it in German. So I hope you will forgive me in English. I can take questions in French, but I will have to respond in English because that is, when it comes to discussing complicated issues of international politics, I'm still not entirely comfortable in French. On the subject of South Africa's interest in Morocco, our relations based on a paradox. It is a fact that Morocco does not feature very highly in South Africa's list of priorities regarding its foreign affairs. But the pillar of South Africa's foreign affairs is African unity, the development of the African continent, and the importance for Africa to take its rightful place in the world. South Africa, as you may know, has had a very interesting history in the last century. But specifically regarding foreign policy, South Africa's current foreign policy goes back a long way. In 1955, the African National Congress, or at that time it was not entirely, not constituted as it is today, but what is today the African National Congress, was fighting, not fighting at that stage, working against the apartheid regime to promote democracy and political rights for all South Africa's citizens, which at that stage was limited only to white people. And the Freedom Charter, which was accepted at Kliptown in 1955, had, a copy here, 3 pages long, had very many important determinations of and expressions of principle, among which there is one section relating to international relations. And many of these determinations have become part of South Africa's new constitution, which was accepted and finalized in 1996, 2 years after the first election, democratic election, which took place in 1994. And in the Freedom Charter, it is stated, the right of all peoples of Africa to independence and self-government shall be recognized and shall be the basis of close cooperation. Now, it is on that basis that South Africa's relationship with other countries in Africa, with the African Union, and in this particular case with Morocco, is based. Now, Ambassador Madawi, with great eloquence, explained Morocco's position regarding the African Union, and it's important to remember that in 1980, 81, 84, neither South Africa nor Namibia were members of the African Union, or OAU as it was at that time. And South Africa joined the OAU for the first time, not even rejoining, it joined the OAU for the first time in 1994. So even this year, as we celebrate 20 years of democracy in South Africa, we also celebrate 20 years of South Africa rejoining the African Union, and then the later change of the OAU into the African Union as it is today. And it's for that reason, although South Africa, to go a little bit into the history, South Africa recognized the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic in 2004, after a more than 10 years process of consideration and deliberation. So it was not done on the spur of the moment, but it was done in the context of the importance of the African Union for South Africa's foreign policy, and the fact that the African Union is one of the pillars of South Africa's foreign policy. Some of the other pillars include global governance, which means promoting multilateralism and the improvement of the multilateral system, the United Nations, the African Union, other international organizations, for instance the World Bank, the IMF, in order to better reflect the reality of today's world, and not just the world of 1945, post the Second World War. Because if you look, for instance, at the United Nations Security Council, it is very unbalanced in its representation. When you consider who are permanent members, and when you have rotating members, and why is it that some countries have a veto and other countries do not have a veto? So one of South Africa's, one of the principles that we promote, and I have our strategic plan for our ministry, which is up to 2018 here. And there's one page that one paragraph that I want to read that for you, which links up to the fact of South Africa's, how South Africa approaches its foreign policy. Is one of the cornerstones. There are 5 cornerstones of South Africa's foreign policy, which include, excuse me, I need my glasses to read the small print. Just catching up. Among these 5 pillars, contribute to regional and continental peace, security, stability, sustainable development through the Africa Union. So it's not just simply the general principles, but specifically working with the African Union, advancing Africa's socio-economic development, strengthening effective governance, and the cooperation for Africa development, and promoting regional organizations as a method or as a tool of promoting African unity. But the most important one is at the top, is through the African Union, and it is for this reason that South Africa has its specific position on Morocco. It has happened to me more than once that speaking to Moroccan people, that the first question or the first comment that is made when they hear I am from South Africa, oh, why is it that South Africa doesn't like Morocco? And my response usually is that that's not true. South Africa doesn't not like Morocco. Oh, but you support the Sahara. And again, that's not entirely true. South Africa supports the United Nations process, which will allow the Sahrawi entity, whatever you call it, Western Sahara, to decide for itself what its future should be. And that is very important, because on the basis, going back to the Freedom Charter, is that settlements of international disputes by negotiation, and South Africa represents the rights and sovereignties of all nations. So each nation should have the right to decide for itself. And something very important to remember in the context of Morocco and the African Union is that the problems did not start in 1980 or in 1984. They started, perhaps we could blame the colonial powers. They go back to pre-colonial powers and the determination of borders, but they also go back. Morocco very happily every year celebrates the Green March. But if you think about it realistically, the Green March was an illegal occupation of a territory whose status was not determined at that stage. And Morocco prevented the process at then, in 1975, from proceeding as the United Nations proposed. And since then, that process has been incomplete. And it is on that basis that the African Union, whatever one may discuss about the legality or the illegality of the membership of the Sahrawi representatives of the OAU, is that the problem goes back further. And relating again, looking at South Africa and Morocco's positions, we can look at some of the historical issues that unite Morocco and South Africa, but there are also issues that show the differences between our countries. In our history, after Morocco's independence, there was support for the liberation movements, for the African National Congress and other organizations working against the then apartheid regime. In 1962, Mr. Mandela made a visit to Morocco. In many histories, you will find that it says that he underwent training in Algeria. But in fact, it was on what is now on the Moroccan side of the border. It was near Oujda, where he stayed, and with other liberation movements from around the world, he participated in training at that time. And that was a very passionate and important time for the development of the ideas of obtaining independence for the countries of Africa. After the changes happened in South Africa, and I was discussing with some of the first present here today, is that I was in Germany in 1999 as a very young vice consul in Germany when the wall came down at the end of 1989, and I experienced everything as it happened there, and at the same time things were happening in South Africa. And it all hangs together because there was a recognition in South Africa that the world, that the relationships between countries in the world, that the Cold War was coming to an end, that there was a movement. And that is one of the things that Mr. de Klerk started and was assisted by Mr. Mandela in continuing the talks after he was freed. And another point that I like to make in discussion is that it took South Africa more than 4 years of discussion and talking and indaba, which means conferencing and discussion in the Zulu language, before we reached the point of having the full democratic election on the basis of an interim constitution. So the entire process of negotiations and discussion and reaching consensus was not rushed. It's that we took our time and we gave everybody a chance to talk and to air their opinions. And as part of that was also the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was preceded by the Goldstone Commission, which enabled victims and perpetrators of atrocities on both sides to stand up and to tell their stories so that people could feel that they had been heard and that they had the opportunity to participate in the process. And okay, the first election in 1994, 10 years later, South Africa recognized the Sahrawi Republic. And there has been a lot of politics since then between South Africa and Morocco. Morocco withdrew its ambassador but did not close its embassy, and the same happened with the former ambassador here departed, and then the new ambassador was not recognized, which is why both our representations are embassies headed by chargé d'affaires, not full ambassadors. I can comment that in the time that I've been in Morocco, I have seen that there has been a slight easing of tensions between the countries. There is a willingness to talk on both sides, from South Africa and from Morocco, that at least it is possible now to discuss our different positions, where previously there was quite a little bit more tension. Possibly this was assisted by the fact that South Africa was a member of the UN Security Council from 2011 to 2012, and Morocco was from 2012 to 2013, and I think that shared year of perhaps of cooperation on the Security Council also made a certain loosening of the tension possible because of the need to work together. Specific uniting factors between South Africa and Morocco, I'll go very quickly over them. I've mentioned the fact of colonial legacies. The borders were drawn without recognition of geographical factors, or social factors, of interpersonal relations, of language, and even of political reality. We have a similar geographic diversity in our countries, with mountains and deserts, and so many people come from South Africa to visiting Rabat, and they say, where's the desert? We don't see any desert here. I said, well, no, not in Rabat, but you go to a different part. The same happens in South Africa. People come to South Africa and say, but where are the lions? You know, lions in Cape Town, there's lots of wine and it's a beautiful landscape, but you have to go north to find the lions. We have rich and diverse cultures. South Africa has 11 official languages. Morocco has taken the momentous step recently of adding one more official language to its list, so now we have 2 official languages. I grew up with two official languages. I speak English and Afrikaans interchangeably. So it wasn't that much of a step to add 9 more languages to our list of official languages. There are challenges in managing this this fact of life, which is now guaranteed for every citizen, and it can relate to any official in his own language. But the fact of the recognition is a very important one because it allows people to express their own individuality. We have similar development challenges, whether it's in infrastructure, in education, health. Water is a very important issue in both our countries, the management and the availability of clean water, both for human use, for industrial use, for agricultural use. Energy, South Africa is very, in that case, differs from Morocco. It's very lucky in having certain sources of energy, such as coal, and a certain amount of gas. But it is an issue, and we have the potential, just as Morocco is applying at the moment, of using solar and other renewable energy sources. Food security is another issue that we share because of the problems of water and availability of agricultural land, linked to the proper training of people to make use of the resources and to develop this in a sustainable way. Some of the great differences between our countries include language. Our colonial masters were different, so therefore South Africa falls in the Anglophone sphere of influence, Morocco in the Francophone, and in a way, as Shakespeare said, never the twain shall meet. If you look at the area of influence of South Africa in Africa, it is very much focused on Anglophone Africa, the same for Morocco in Francophone Africa. And there's very small encroachments in the other areas, both as far as business and as far as politics goes. Of course, there's the differences in religion, but that's not a major issue because, fortunately, in South Africa, religion was never a point of contention, and we have a very wide, but South Africa is predominantly Christian, Morocco predominantly Muslim, but in South Africa, fortunately, religion was never a point of contention, and religious practice has always been free. There are some certain issues that have been worked out, things like marriage rights and inheritance rights, especially for Muslim and Hindu faiths, have had to be worked out in terms of the new human rights available under the new constitution, but those have mostly been matters of detail. I've mentioned mineral resources, infrastructure. South Africa had a very much more developed infrastructure at the time of the transition. But that infrastructure was focused on a very small part of the population, and the challenge of South Africa in the last 20 years and still today is expanding the infrastructure to make it available to the entire population while at the same time maintaining what infrastructure existed at the time of transition. South Africa is much further from the rest of the world. If you think of us, I was looking at the map earlier, there's no borders on that map. Right down at the southern tip of the continent, distances to travel are so much further. That is where Morocco is likely to be closer to markets, to be in a much more strategically available position closer to Europe on the travel route between America and the Middle East, so to speak. Migration. South Africa is a destination for migrants from the rest of Africa, where I think most of the migrants who come through Morocco are more interested in getting to Europe and not staying in Morocco. And then a big difference historically and also today is that in achieving change in South Africa, there was a worldwide pressure and interest in getting rid of apartheid, in achieving democracy in South Africa. And one of the differences that I see with Morocco is that while Morocco has an issue of the problem of determining the exact status of the Western Sahara region, there is not that concerted worldwide interest and pressure applied to Morocco to solve this issue. And that I see as a difference, whereas South Africa was under pressure to change and to improve the situation. If you look at the attitude, France's relations with Morocco were looked at, if you look at the attitude of China, there's much more interest in cooperating with Morocco than in fact solving or putting pressure on Morocco to solve their outstanding issues. So that is one of the ways that Morocco differs, and that Morocco doesn't have to work against the headwinds, so to speak, of opposition to its political position. Just as a final point, I would like to mention that as a diplomat of many years, and starting my diplomatic life under the previous regime, is that as a diplomat you learn to work with a certain pragmatism. and that it's important to recognize that the positions that you represent on behalf of your government are not necessarily positions that might be popular or that anybody agrees with, but you need to be able to talk to anybody, whether they agree with you or do not agree with you, and to discuss intelligently what you agree on and what you do not agree on. And linked to that, the importance that South Africa has, and from our own experience and from my own feeling as well, is the importance of never stopping talking. You always continue to talk, you always continue to share your opinions, and in that way it should be possible eventually to get to know each other better and to find some common ground on which it is possible to find a solution to a problem. Thank you very much.